on. More silence. Oh, okay. All right. I got at least I got a thumbs up. Um, so let's do this. Let's just launch into practice and practice specifically starting out with the intro and elim rules for chapter 6 and 8. And then let's chat a bit about questions, problems, confusions you might have about translations. Remember, we said on Tuesday that we haven't spent a lot of time on that, right? And in fact, I think Deb had asked a question about, for example, the expression only if, which we want to talk more about. So that's what I'm thinking. But so let me know, though, if there's something that you want to talk about that we haven't or aren't. Remember, we were working on this this argument on Tuesday. This is where we left off. P.S. Please ignore the fact that I can't make it go away, that the conjunction elimination pop-up rule, it's the rule that pops up when you're working in the drop-down rule menu for an argument, for proof. Please ignore the fact that it doesn't want to go away. That happens sometimes. And what I don't want to do is quit out of Fitch because I got a bunch of stuff open that I want us to work on. But anyway, I'm going to assume, unless you tell me otherwise, that what you're seeing looks familiar, right? So we were working on this on Tuesday, and part of what we were doing was working backward. So we said that we have the following strategy. When you want to establish a biconditional, and in this case, the biconditional happens to be the conclusion of the argument, you're going to set up, and now my cursor is circling over the biconditional intro rule, you want to set up biconditional intro. One way that you can think about what you're doing with the biconditional intro rule is working effectively two successive, that is on the same line, successive conditional intro sequences, right? So what we're saying is this: when we work the conditional intro, we're saying, look, if I have P, so on the assumption I have P, and I derive from that Q, it follows, therefore, I've just proven that if I have P, I have Q, so I'm going to say it on the horizontal. Right, so remember, P is any sentence in the universe, Q is any sentence in the universe, just a stand-in. Similarly, now look at biconditional intro. You're saying, if I have P, then I have Q, and if I have Q, then I have P. Notice the language I just used. It's antecedent, consequent in a parenthetical, conjunction, consequent, antecedent, right? But now the consequent is the antecedent, right? So if P, then Q, and if Q, then P, right? So that's what we set up earlier on Tuesday. Tell me if there are any issues with this. I hope it rings bells. If I didn't see you on Tuesday, don't forget that meeting, the work in that session, I would have sometime yesterday, I think, I would have posted the video where I just describe in the link, and I may have also put our meeting date in a parenthetical, I'm not sure, but I describe in a link what we worked on. So you'd find this here. Okay, so we had set up biconditional intro, then working backward, right, where we saw that at line 18, D was our new goal, right? It's the goal of that subproof. We then set up, right, starting at line 14, negation intro. So that's why you have the highlight of 14 through 17 and then the assertion of negation intro. Remember, you can check steps as you go to make sure that you've set things up correctly. And then I think this is where we left off, right? So one of the things we want to do now is to cite and justify each of our steps. So what I'm going to ask us to do is practice working backward in the following way. I've got my cursor at line 17. Look at your rules and tell me how line 17 was derived. So what is the citation, or what are the citations, and what's the justification? And don't be shy, just yell it out and I will do the work. Who wants to cite and justify 17? Here, I'll turn my audio up because I'm sure you're yelling, you're clamoring to be heard, but I just don't have my volume up enough.
Is it 14 and 5?
Okay, so we've got 14 and 5. I was successful in clicking line 14, but Fitch won't let me click 5. Let's talk about this. And in fact, this is a perfect opportunity for us to go back, Derivation, to what you and I were talking about earlier. So here's the main line of our argument, which I'm highlighting in blue. Now I'm going to change the coloring. Take a look at 5 to 12, 13 to 18. And then I'm going to change the coloring one more time. Two more times. One for the first nested subproof. And then, I hope this color is bright enough, one for the second. So, Derivation, you asked this awesome question. I said, hey, I tried to click on line 5 and I couldn't. When you look at where lines 14 to 17 occur, does it make sense to say that while you can reach outside of this nested subproof sequence, let's say up to B, you can't, the B at line 13, you can't reach outside of that subproof to go into the subproof that begins at 5 and ends at 12 because the 5 to 12 subproof has already been discharged. It's closed off now.
Got it.
Okay, so take your excellent thinking where you know that the contradiction symbol has been introduced. So we're going to say contradiction intro. But now tell me where within the sequence that we are allowed to cite you've derived that contradiction. What are the two lines?
(15, 16).
Beautiful. Good. Oops. I keep forgetting that we've got a little bit of a lag. So I click twice because I'm impatient and then I unclick things. Remember, we talked about this as well. Check as you go, right? If you're not sure, check as you go. Now, don't forget, you should also look at how you've mapped the contradiction intro rule onto the sequence in question. Then also, let's go back out to line 18 real quick. Notice that the contradiction intro rule occurs within the larger sequence, which is negation intro. So keep mapping these rule forms on. Okay, how about line 16? Do you see that I've already really, Mia? Highlighted 3 and 13. What's the rule?
Conditional elimination.
Good. And I'm going to ask you, Derege, at the risk of sounding obnoxious, I'm going to ask you to just assert it. I get the sense that you're tentative, and I get the sense that you're tentative because you're asserting the sentence in the form of a question, right? But I think you know this stuff better than you believe you do. Now, why am I getting this X mark? Well, that's because notice, remember earlier we talked about the plan. Sorry, working off to the side, and so we were making notes about what we needed to do. So let me get rid of these parentheticals because they're going to Fitch doesn't know what to do with them. Okay. So Derege said authoritatively that line 16 comes from 3 and 13. Yay. How about line 15? Here again, the citations are 4 and 14. What's the rule?
Elimination of biconditional.
Yes. Say it with the power of rephrase, with the power of confidence, Kate. Say it again, but no question mark at the end. You can do it.
Elimination of biconditional.
Woo! Look at that. I love it. All right, awesome. Okay, now how about the citations and justifications? Again, working backward. I hope that the color coding is helpful to some, but not distracting to others. If it's distracting, let me know. We'll remove them once everybody's who does like them has seen what the coding represents. How are we doing? 12. Where'd we get it? And by the way, remember we talked about this. It's a really great idea when you can to strike through what you've already used, not because you won't use it again, but just so that you know you've used it and know that you will always use every premise that's either given or that you've derived or that you've further assumed. So let me do this real quick. I'm going to go back to the annotation. Oh, let me change the coloring. Okay, so if we're down here at line, in that second subproof sequence, so we've used 4 and 14. We've used 3 and 13. We've used 15 and 16. And then we've used 14 through 17. So I'll just I'll just X through 17, right? And then down at line 19, we're saying 5 to 12 and 13 to 18. So I'll strike 18 off. Okay. So with this in mind, guys, as we're up in the major structuring subproof that began at line 5, we're at line 12. What have we not used yet? We haven't used 1, we haven't used 2. So how did we get 12? Take a look at where 12 is. It's back on the green structuring subproof line, which means that it came out of the fuchsia.
Line 2.
All right, so line 2, thank you, Derege. That's one of our lines. What's the other? So I highlighted line 2. What else?
6 through 7.
Good.
And 8 through 11.
Wonderful. What's the rule?
Elimination of conjunction. Disjunction.
Yeah, there you go. Good. Wonderful. Yay. All right, now hold on. I know that this process is a little tedious, but I hope that it'll be worth it. So we worked 2, and then we've got this whole sequence. But since we still need to address the nested subproof, I'm not going to strike anything out there yet. Okay, how about 11? Remember what happens after we've generated a contradiction. We're either in a nested, or sorry, rephrase. We're either in a subproof and we exit the subproof and introduce a negation. But in this case, notice we didn't exit a subproof. We're still within a sequence. So what's the other option here for a rule?
Contradiction elimination
Awesome. Assert it.
of line 10.
Yeah, nice. Contradiction, elimination, line 10. Kate, thank you. How about line 10? How'd we get that?
9 and 5.
Beautiful. And that was just the dulcet tone of assertion and not asking the question, because you know this stuff, you guys. You totally know it. You're saying contradiction intro, right?
Yes.
Good. How about 9? Now, this is where you might say, man, Mia, we already crossed off line 4, but that doesn't mean we don't use it, that we can't use it again, right? So be aware that while crossing out lines is great to kind of keep you alerted to the fact that you've used a line, it doesn't mean that you can't use it again. So maybe what you're doing when you're working, if you're working pencil paper, is something like this. Maybe you say, I think what I'm going to do instead of crossing a line out is I'm just going to write a check mark. So I know I've used it, but that won't stop me from using it again. Okay. Does it make sense to say that D comes from 4 and what else? 8. What's the rule?
Elimination.
Biconditional elimination.
You're both right. Thank you, Kate. Thank you, Deb. Biconditional elimination. I know it was hard to see because I struck through it. And then we don't do anything with 8. Remember, we can't cite any or justify an assumptive step. It just is an assumption. How about what we haven't yet used? What's left that we haven't yet used?
Line 1.
And
6.
beautiful. Eliminate.
Elimination of
Sorry, Kate, I jumped all over you. I didn't mean to. Elimination of what?
conditional.
Beautiful. Okay. All right. So we're going to get all of our check marks. Let me push down the goal so that we can see everything, I hope. Come on. There we go. And then for the sake of the visual, let me get rid of all the lines, because otherwise they'll follow us everywhere. Okay. Can everybody see this okay? Where's my cursor? Where's my cursor? Hold on. Oh, there it is. How are we doing? Is everybody good? I'm going to hide the proof toolbar too. Okay. There it is. We're good to go.
I have a quick question
Sure.
about how you have the line numbers on the side. When we do our proof and turn it in, do you want the line numbers like that?
So Deb, if I understand you correctly, you're thinking you're going to work by hand?
No, if you don't put in the line numbers, it doesn't show which line number that they're referencing.
Oh, I see. Okay. So, what you'll want to do is this. When you're working, in order to check your work and then get all your check marks, right? You'll show your step numbers, and then what will happen is the line numbers will appear. That said, I believe it's the case that when you save your work and you upload the file and then I download the file and I look at it, the line numbers may not appear, but as long as all of, I'll just hit the check proof and it'll tell me if you've missed a line number. Does that make sense?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, great question.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, do that for yourself, but for your own confidence and your own clarification and your own reinforcement of the concepts. But I'll end up just checking it on my end. Okay, so if everybody tell me if you're ready, if you're not ready to move to another practice exercise. This one's about to go. Going. By argument. Okay, you ready for another one? Yeah, so here's an exercise. Whoopsie. Here's an exercise that's completed. Or sorry, rephrase. I apologize. This is an exercise that's constructed. I haven't completed it. Notice that I didn't put the conclusion of the argument in the goal window. It's not necessary that you do that. You obviously know when you're opening up an exercise from the textbook that the goal is there. You can also input the goal yourself. Remember, all you do is under the goal drop-down under the goal drop-down menu, you click New Goal. Okay, so what I'm asking you to do here is to complete a constructed proof. So what I'm asking you to do first off because I've got my cursor down at line 8, is I'm asking you to recognize the structure, right? So again, apologies for the fact that our, goody. But then I think it's going to come back. Oh, no, it doesn't. Oh, that's great. Okay. So I'm asking you to recognize, so basically identify what strategy has been used. And then if you're not sure, oh no, that's not what I want. If you're not sure about the proof lines, like what goes with what, we can always color code like we did with the last exercise. But anyway, so I've been yammering on. You've had a chance in that time to look at what's been done. Tell me what strategy was used. So by strategy, I mean what structuring subproof sequence. Is it disjunction elim? Is it negation intro? Is it conditional intro? Or is it biconditional intro? Right? Notice when you look at your rule sheet, you've got 4 strategic rules that set a proof structure up for you. So which one is it?
Conditional intro.
Beautiful. Thank you, Chloe. Conditional intro. And we can check it, make sure we're right. Uh-oh. What happened?
That's what I was about to say. So you ended a subproof for 2,
Uh-huh.
but you haven't concluded R.
Nice. Beautiful. Good for you. So there are 2 things to think about here. One is when you if you didn't notice it, which I didn't. I mean, this wasn't me testing you. This was me not paying attention. So when you get a red X, it's great. It's like, thank you, Fitch. You've just shown me, that I've made a mistake. So here's the thing. When I was talking, I'm yammering away. I thought for sure that I saw this. but clearly I hadn't. So thank you, Fitch, for pointing it out. But, and Kate, please don't hear me criticizing you because I'm not. But I want you to know that if you saw that there was an error, don't be shy about saying so. I tell me if I'm wrong, but I think you maybe didn't say anything either because I was yammering and you didn't want to interrupt, but please feel free to interrupt. Or you weren't confident enough, and I'm telling you, you know your stuff, okay? Don't be shy. Say, hey, there's a problem there. Mia, you made a mistake. You didn't finish the proof. So, right, good job. Okay, so we check again. Yay, woof, relief. All right, so Chloe's exactly right. That's the structure. Kate, you're exactly right. I hadn't finished the sequence. So look at 2 through 8. Ignore the nested subproofs. Look at 2 through 8 and 9, and then look at conditional intro. 2 through 8 and 9 conditional intro. Now, when we set up conditional intro, we said that R is the conclusion that we want to achieve. So within this subproof sequence, R is our goal. R is our conclusion. So then the question is, working backward, how do we get R? Well, we notice that we've got a disjunction at line 1. We've got the contradiction of one side of the disjunction at line 2. And we actually have our goal on the right side of the disjunction at line 2. So that's our verbal working backward. So then we say, oh, this is great. All I need to do is what? Tell me what you're seeing. Lines 1, 3 to 5, 6 to 7. 1, 3 to 5, 6 to 7. What's the rule?
Disjunction elimination.
Beautiful. And Deb, your turn. Assert it.
Disjunction elimination. Do you want the lines? You already have the lines.
Yeah, we got the lines. Beautiful.
Okay.
Thank you. Awesome. And I know I sound snotty, giving you a line reading, as it were, but I really want you guys to believe that you know what you are doing. And here's the thing. If you make a mistake, you fix it. No big, but you do know what you're doing. Excellent. So how about 7? What did we do from 6 to 7? And I know that I don't have, in order to make the document as easily readable as possible, I've enlarged the font, which means we don't have every rule list, shown, but what's the move from 6 to 7?
Professor.
What do you think, Jeremy?
It's a reiteration.
Beautiful. No, oh wait, Jeremy. It's a reiteration. Good. You already corrected yourself. I'm not going to I'm not going to say it as a question. I'm going to assert it. Excellent. All right. How about line 5? Who wants to jump on line 5?
Elimination of a contradiction.
Is it?
Yes.
Good. Awesome. Beautiful. All right. How about number 4?
Contradiction. Introduction.
Yes. Nice, Dereje. Really good. You guys are doing awesome. Okay, so let me make the font a little smaller. Okay, beautiful work. So here's what I'm hoping you guys think, but you'll tell me if this is not accurate, or I mean, it's accurate that I'm hoping, but if it's not accurate to say that my hope is realized, you say, yes, I see it. You say, yes, I have identified and am confident about every citation and justification. Are we ready for more? And does it make sense to say that with the addition of the two sets of rules, intro and elim, for respectively conditional and biconditional, you're just adding to what you already know how to do, right? So you're expanding if your power of derivation, or you're expanding your derivation powers. I'm going to close this unless there's something you want to talk about on this one. Okay. How about this proof on the assumption that I didn't do what I did last time, which was say I had constructed the proof and that you would just complete it. Let's suppose I really have constructed the proof. What are you seeing? Talk to me about line 10.
Intro, I want to say contradiction, but it's not contradiction. Conditional.
Beautiful. Good. What's the, since we're saying conditional intro, Kate, what's the subproof sequence that we need to highlight?
3 to 9.
Beautiful. Check. Okay, so that makes line 9 within that subproof sequence the goal. You know already that you could eliminate what is now line 8 and just assert A, but there's a reason why I haven't done that. So if you're really comfortable with this material, just know that you could complete the proof in one less step, and Fitch would be perfectly comfortable with that. But I do think that not quote unquote skipping a rule is helpful. So how did we get line 9?
Negation elimination of line 8.
Wonderful. And
I have a quick question on that. That's the only rule where we actually take away two objects, right? Two signs.
Right. So
Okay.
it's an analog to two negations, or two minus signs equal a plus sign or sign. I don't know my math. Pretend I didn't say that. I wasn't very helpful at all. But yes, you are correct. And go ahead, just while we're here, Deb, look at our negation elimination rule. And we already know from our discussions of truth functionality that two negations are truth functionally equivalent to an affirmed sentence. Now, how did we end up with the two negations? What's happening at line 8?
You did you proved the negation from line 4 to be contradictory.
Beautiful. Nice way of talking about it too, Deb. Really good. So is everybody comfortable with the highlighted sequence? and the way that Deb articulated that sequence. I think it's really helpful. Notice from 7 to 8, we've exited a subproof. So let those lines help you see where you are in a proof. So then the question is, how did we get 7? How did we generate a contradiction? Right, so contradiction intro from lines, and look at your contradiction intro rule, your truth functional contradiction rule. What 2 lines should I cite?
5 and 6.
Beautiful. Good, good, good. How about 6? And is everybody comfortable with the idea that if we want to think about this sort of spatially, you're reaching up and pulling down? The argument that is valid is one whose premises already contain the conclusion. The process of the derivation is a process of extracting that conclusion, documenting, accounting for each step along the way. How about then line 6? Where did that come from? How did we get it?
Negation introduction from 5.
Oh, interesting, Derivation. Okay, you're exactly right that there is a contradiction between 5 and 6. That's how we accounted for 7. But here's a question. Can you derive the negated B from B itself? We don't have a rule for that. Let's do this real quick. I'm going to go ahead and just check off what we've used. So from 3 to 9, right, we've got 10. And then 9 comes from 8. 7 comes from 5 and 6. But we're asking about where 6 comes from. So here's the question that I want you to think about. Can you look above?
Yeah, 1.
There you go.
Sentence 1.
Yeah, so all you're doing is trying to find out where not be came from given what you have, and you're exactly right. Good. Actually, hold on just a sec. I'm going to just erase so that okay. So 1 and 4. And what's the rule?
Conditional elimination.
Assert it.
Conditional elimination.
Beautiful. Good. And then lastly, what have we not yet used? 2 and 3, yeah? What's the rule?
Yeah. Elimination conditional.
Beautiful. She says with just barely a hint of a question. Barely. Yay! What do we think? So is it fair to say, just as to pause here for just a sec before we work another practice exercise, is it fair to say that we have the set of rules, we've got our, by way of those rules, we've got our strategies, and it doesn't matter what we're given, when we're given a valid argument, or we can look at some exercises to help with the following, when we have a necessarily true sentence, which is to say a sentence that can be proved from any set of premises, right? So if you have a premiseless argument, that is a necessary statement, then you're just applying the same rules in different contexts, right? It's not like these rules are going to change or you're going to be confronted with something that's unlike anything you've ever seen, right? It occurs within this world, if you will. Any questions about this guy?
I have a quick question.
Yeah,
Professor.
what are you thinking, Jeremy?
In terms of like the rules, like I understand the rules, and like the way I see it is just more like practice and drilling these questions, and so like that's what makes it helpful having the rules to the side to see what works and what doesn't, because it's a lot of trial and error. And it's up to the class if they want to see this too. Like maybe they feel more confident. I'm not sure where everyone's confidence level is, but can we use an example where, and it can use all these rules, conditional and biconditional. Can we look at one where like if what do you call it? The proof itself isn't valid. Like it gets to a point where it's like, okay, we can't really, how you said you're grabbing upward, like you can't grab more and it's no longer valid. Does that make sense?
So are you saying that one way to see how strategies work is to try to derive the conclusion of an invalid argument? So it would be maybe something like this. So P then Q, Q. So this is affirming the consequent. Therefore P, right? And you might say, okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I've got this atomic sentence, and one of my strategies is this. In order for me to derive the conclusion, rephrase. One way I can derive the conclusion when I have an atomic sentence is negation intro. Whoops. So what I'll do is I'll assume the conclusion is false, and the idea will be to derive a contradiction so that I can get out and say, no, in fact, the conclusion must be true. But if you do that, then you say, okay, well, I'm assuming not P, but now how do I go forward? Well, I guess wouldn't it be great to be able to generate a contradiction? Can I do that? Well, what if I assume P, and then that gets me by conditional elimination Q, but I already know I have Q. I was told I have Q, right? It becomes clear that there's no way forward. There's no way out. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Is that what you have in mind? Something like that?
Well, like, yeah, that makes sense. Like, it was just one of those things like when I'm going through the exercises, I don't know, like, I know in some of the exercises, and I'm thinking about chapter 6, like, if you couldn't, what do you call it? If it wasn't valid to create it in Tarski's world.
Right.
So,
yes.
I was just talking in terms of like my progression through like the chapters. There was a point where I wasn't feeling confident enough to like create these proofs and find it to a part where it's like, okay, it's not valid. So I had to like, personally for me, I would create it in Tarski's world first. And then if I knew that I couldn't like provide a counterexample, then I knew that it was valid.
Yeah, nice. Good for you.
Like a very narrow-minded way of looking at it.
No, wait, stop right there. It's not narrow-minded. In fact, in those exercise sets where you're told some arguments in this set are valid, some are invalid, you're doing exactly what you need to do. You're saying, okay, I'm going to see if I can demonstrate non-consequence, and if I can't, unless I missed something, the argument's got to be valid. So now I'm going to open up the argument in Fitch. That's great, Jeremy. That's exactly right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you didn't do anything wrong. You did exactly what we're supposed to do. And let's do this. We can either look at one of those exercises now, or we can hold on and look at it before we finish meeting today to talk specifically about what the way that you had approached building your confidence.
Okay. Sounds good, Professor.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, like because I'm at that point, like for me personally, like I would say like about a week ago, like there was no way I could like validate the proofs like on its own. I wasn't feeling very confident, so I had to open Tarski's world. But I'm getting to that point where it's like I can like figure out the proofs before going to Tarski's world, if that makes sense.
Yes.
It's still
Yes.
a whole lot of practice and drilling. So it's like I feel like chapter 6 is foundational, but like I'm still personally, because it's like math problems. Like even if you know all the rules, like there's so many ways where you can create like a new proof. So it's just drilling it, I guess.
Right.
In general.
So it's going to be the case that some of the arguments with which you're confronted can be proven, or sorry, rephrase, that some conclusions of arguments can be proven in multiple ways, and then some are provable in just one way. And so as you get more comfortable with deploying these rules and thinking about deploying them strategically, you say, oh, I could go this way or I could go that way. But what you were saying about your confidence with the question of validity, let's address in this way. So two things. You are asked in the text to work with arguments, to work with exercise sets that involve some valid, some invalid arguments. On the exam that you upload to Canvas, the exam that I create, not from exercises out of the textbook, but separately, those exercises involve exclusively valid arguments, right? So it's not like you'll have to test them. But as a reminder, Jeremy, one thing you can do, if you're not sure about the validity of an argument, and here I'm just thinking about truth functionality, I'm not thinking about Tarski's world, you can put the conclusion immediately after the premises, and then you can ask if, by way of a truth table, the argument is valid. In other words, you can ask if line 3 is a tautological consequence of 1 and 2, and when you get the check mark, right, you're basically seeing that Fitch has worked a truth table in the background. You just haven't seen it. Yeah.
Well, I mean, like I get that.
Okay, good.
Because I know that's one way of doing it, the TautCon.
Good.
Right. And then another way would be like going to Tarski's world, creating it.
Good.
I was just saying, like, in terms of my observation, like when I was like working the strategies and tactics, right?
Yes.
Like I so like focused on it. Like, I mean, I think the book said it itself. Like, you have to kind of understand what the sentences are saying, because if you're too focused on trying to just input it, like, the different rules, it's kind of like playing solitaire, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm trying to like, I have to like pull myself out and then like check it. But yeah, like for me personally, like I'm getting more used to like working the proofs, I guess.
Good. Yes. And that happens. I mean, so what happens for some of us is we say, oh yeah, got it, see it right away. And then for some of us, it's no, I don't know what I'm looking at. I need some time to get familiarized with the territory, et cetera, et cetera. There's no right way to be. I mean, as long as at some point you say, I know what I'm doing and I can explain it, that's what we want. That's all we need.
All right, sounds good.
Okay, so does everybody see the...
One more question?
Oh yeah, Deb,
Sorry.
what are you thinking? No, don't apologize.
The proof that you had before with the two conditionals,
Yeah.
when we see two premises like that, should the go-to strategy be to do a subproof?
Forgive me, because I'm not,
The one that you just did, the one that was like negation A, conditional negation B, that one?
Yeah.
And then the C conditional B was the second premise.
Mm-hmm.
How did you decide to get start C subproof with C?
So, and forgive me, because I like, my memory is so awful. I don't remember what the conclusion was, but
It was a C conditional A.
Oh, okay. So here's what we want to think about. And I'm just going to enter a new goal. so we don't know, in this case, let's pretend that we don't know what the premises are, right? So let's just pretend that there aren't any premises here. We don't know what the premises are, but we're told that the premises do yield the conclusion, which happens to be C arrow A. When you want to establish a conditional, and in this case the conditional is the goal of the argument, but the conditional could be a sentence you want to establish en route to the conclusion. That's what you do, is you set up conditional intro. Am I answering your question?
Yeah, because I was wondering, when you have like a conditional, you can't assert like the A or the B on either side, right? So you have to do a subproof. Is that the first?
Right. So when the sentence that you want to establish is a conditional claim, and we think about what a conditional claim says in ordinary English, it's not saying that I do have C. The conditional claim says if I have C, I have A. So the subproof says, well, let me assume I have C. So what happens if I do have C? Well, blah, 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 I have A. Therefore, if I have C, I have A. That's the way that we can walk through verbally what this subproof, the structuring sequence looks like. Am I addressing your question?
If the premise was like C conditional B, you couldn't break that apart and just say C on the without doing a subproof, right?
Right. So let's say you had so you said C conditional B. When you so here's the sentence, here's the conditional. When you're given a conditional,
right,
or when you've derived a conditional, the consequent of which you want to infer, you have to have, or that is either be given or derive or assume the antecedent. Right? So the rule form, another way to look at the rule is as...
Right, but how do you prove the antecedent? So you can use it.
You can't prove the antecedent. That would be the attempt that, remember Jeremy was asking about an invalid argument, and I was trying to prove the antecedent by way of affirming the consequent. What you can do is prove the antecedent is false.
False.
But in order to do that, you'd need to have, sorry, hold on just a sec. Let me get back to in order to do that, you'd need to have the negated consequent.
It would have to be provided for you, correct?
Either provided for you, you'd have to assume it, and other elements would have to be in place to let you, successfully end the subproof, or you derive it somewhere in your proof. And we do that. We have done that. But yeah, that's it. So this argument form, you were talking about this earlier, this is the modus tollens argument form that in some versions of the system we are given as a rule. In our version of the system, we prove this rule.
Do you have to do that as a subproof and then prove C? Or do you just do it as the main proof?
In this case, you're going to need a subproof. So you're going to use negation intro. So you assume C, derive B, generate the contradiction, and get it. Yeah.
Yeah, I got it. Okay.
Right. On the other hand, so let's just make sure you're comfortable here. On the other hand, if I want to eliminate the consequent, right? I want to pull down the consequent. I need to have the antecedent, and there's no subproof. Take a look at conditional elim. Take a look at this sequence. I'm either given the C
You
or
have to be given that.
or I
Correct.
derived it somewhere in my
You have to
proof.
derive it first.
Right, I can't
as
pull.
a subproof.
Yeah. Well, it would depend on what else I have, but the only way to dismantle the conditional is to affirm the antecedent.
Okay. Thank you.
By way of, in other words, if I want the consequent or the rule of conditional elimination as a dismantling of the arrow, the dismantling of the arrow in this case requires a subproof. In this
You
case,
can't
does
just
not.
pull it out.
Yep.
You have to do a subproof to prove it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Good for you.
Thank you.
Of course. No, these are great questions. So let's take a look at this argument. So, sorry, bear with me for half a second. Show step numbers. Okay. So, ordinary English is in the Word document. Walter is barking only if Stewie is. One or the other isn't barking, so Walter isn't barking after all. Now, the after all is just something I've added for sort of the way that we, speak when we're in conversation, right? So, I'm at home. I know the way each of my dog's barks sound, and maybe I'm trying to figure out what's going on because I'm hearing things. I'm not seeing anything, right? So I may draw this conclusion in a very quickly, right? In terms of how I would ordinarily think when I'm looking, sitting in my office and I'm hearing noises, right? So take a look at the phrase only if, right? We know that the phrase only if represents, or expresses, I should say, expresses a necessary condition. We also know that the necessary condition is translated, from ordinary English in the consequent position, right? So only if becomes Walter, Stewie. We express the same thing when we say the following: if Walter is barking, then Stewie is too. And here, the ordinary if-then relationship, right, is the same in terms of the translation, right? So we have the claimed or actual sufficient condition, right? And the claimed or actual necessary condition. Remember also we talk about the if and the then in terms of antecedent. I can spell and talk at the same time. Antecedent, consequent, right? If, then. So take a look at the first sentence in the argument in ordinary English. Take a look at number 1 in Fitch. The other thing I should point out, just to be as comprehensive as possible, I wrote is translated from ordinary English because here we were in ordinary English, right? But the necessary condition, regardless of how it's expressed, always appears on the right side of the arrow. Then one or the other is not barking. So who are we talking about? We're talking about Walter, we're talking about Stewie, we don't know which one is not barking. So we're saying either Walter isn't barking or Stewie isn't barking. Right? And then we have our conclusion. So one of the things, like I was mentioning earlier, that we do is we think through these inferences, very, very quickly. And by these inferences, I mean what you're seeing on the left-hand side, right? One of the really nice things about the work that we're doing is that we get to dissect how correct reasoning within a given system works, so that we can very clearly see how it is that these two premises yield this conclusion, right? Okay, so when we're over here now on the Fitch side, we've got our conclusion at line 10, and the setup is a negation introduction, right? So let's go back to our thinking about strategies. One thing that we've said is when the conclusion is a negated sentence or is an atomic sentence, negation intro is a great strategy to use. That said, what's another strategy that you could use? You could use disjunction elimination, right? Whenever you have a disjunction, you're going to eliminate it. So that could be another way to go, which would mean that this nested subproof would actually be your structuring subproof. Does that make sense? So we've got negation intro, nested in negation intro is disjunction elim. Oops, sorry guys. Right? So we're saying, look, whether Walter's not barking or Stewie's not barking, we've got a contradiction, right? We've got a necessarily false sentence, which means Walter can't be barking. Contradiction. Contradiction. Oops. Conditional elim. So Deb, here's a case where we didn't have W to dismantle the conditional at line 1, but we assumed it and it paid off. It's not like we assumed it and didn't pay that assumption back legally, validly, right?
Right.
Oops. What do we think? We keep doing the same stuff, just in under different circumstances, but they're all within, if you will, the same world.
How did line 4 help with proving the contradiction?
So does it make sense that the second of the successive subproof sequence for the disjunction at line 2 involved the right side of the disjunction at line 2, assumed at line 7, and then we reached up, but still within a sequence that hadn't yet been discharged, that hadn't yet been completed. That's line 4.
Oh, I see it. I see it. Okay.
Yeah?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Of course, of course. Okay, now, how about this one? So, sorry, bear with me. All right, so there's lots of COVID talk, right? So let's assume that we're having a conversation about, you know, how our lives are going to go back to some sense of what we're used to, right? Here we are, you and I, we're meeting virtually. I'm grateful to meet you at all, but you know, we'd prefer to meet face to face. It's not safe, et cetera, et cetera. So here's an argument. We all want to have a robust economy. We also want people to be healthy. We don't want to sacrifice people just to have a robust economy, presumably. You know, I take care of my compromised 87-year-old mother. I'm not willing to sacrifice her so that the economy can get back on track. At the same time, I'm really lucky. I've got pretty good job security. So you know, I don't want to you know, sacrifice people's jobs either. I saw, you know, how are we going to work this? So there's a lot of this talk going on. So here's a what seems to be a pretty decent line of reasoning that I've heard, or that I would hope to hear. If the economy is to rebound, then we've got to test asymptomatic individuals, symptomatic individuals, and conduct contact tracing. Unfortunately, none of these latter requirements are occurring, so you know, the economy's not going to rebound. Now, I've put this argument in present tense. I'm trying to avoid issues of future tenses. But does the argument make sense? I hope so. Maybe you think that some of the items are erroneous. You know, maybe you think that the second sentence is false. I mean, I don't know, right? Maybe it depends on where you are, right? South Korea is doing an awesome job of tracing and testing both symptomatic and asymptomatic individuals. But let's say we know we're talking about the United States, right? Let me find the argument. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and close out the Walter and Stewie argument. Here it is. Okay. Is everybody comfortable with the translation? So here's premise one. Here's premise two, and I'm taking the liberty, it'll make more sense when we get to chapter 9, what I'm saying now, but I've taken the liberty of translating the second sentence in terms of a singular, right? It's not the case that asymptomatic, symptomatic, and contact tracing is happening. Those are being translated as singular sentences as opposed to quantified sentences. And then the conclusion. Right? Now, let's go ahead and make sure we're clear about what our connectives are. So, I don't know if these colors will work for you. Uh-oh. So here's the if then, right? Now this comma, you can probably imagine, is in our translation going to be replaced by a, is going to be replaced by a conjunction. Does it make sense why? Right, so I'm color coding. That may work for you, it may not work for you, but another thing that you can do is pull stuff off to the side, right? So I'm going to use E for economy rebounds. I've got my arrow. Oops, I've got my arrow, right? Then I've got asymptomatic individuals and symptomatic individuals and contact tracing. I know that I need to put a pair of parentheses around these conjunctions, right? And I need to put the parentheses around the conjunctions because as we read the ordinary English language sentence, we notice that the sentence begins with the conditional, right? And that is going to tell you that you've got the conditional as the main connective. Now, what I could also do here is just say, okay, if the economy rebounds, then, and then I could spell these things out. Asymptomatic people are tested, and I can spell. Asymptomatic individuals are tested and symptomatic individuals are tested, right? So you could do that, right? So that you're spelling everything out as explicitly as possible, right? And then you continue on with the next sentence. None of these things are happening. Now I chose to write in Fitch the negation of a series of disjunctions. That said, you know as well as I do from our De Morgan's equivalences that what you could do is replace. You could drive the negation through and replace the disjunctions with conjunctions, right? I mean, you've got those options. Okay, so let me pause here and ask you if the movement from the ordinary English into the notation, the logical notation that we've learned makes sense. And I'm just going to go ahead and go back to what I originally had. Okay. How do we set this thing up? There are no nested subproofs. It's simply a matter of what? Setting up.
Negation introduction.
Yeah, negation introduction. Really good. And I'm hoping too, Jeremy and I have talked about this a bit, that while the goal is for you to just know the rules, right? Such that you use the rule sheet as like a security blanket. It's really great for you to continue to have the rule sheet with you so that you can check it. Okay, so negation intro. How about line 6? Or I apologize, line 7, the contradiction. Where do we get that?
Contradiction intro of line 2.
Okay, so we've got line 2 and what else?
Line 6.
And line 6. Really good. Thank you, Deb. How about line 6 itself?
Negation elimination from line 2.
We cannot simply pull off the negation at line 2, right? That's what's driving the sentence. Will this help a little bit? And then what is now line 7? Do you see 1, 2, 3?
Disjunction intro.
Awesome. Derivation, since you were talking about line 2, are you comfortable?
Yeah.
Good. And again, line 6. Oh, you know what I did? Yeah, I did. Okay. Line 6 comes from line
5.
Awesome. What is it again? Now you asked the question. You made the assertion in the form of a question. We could always play Jeopardy if you want. A or S. And Deb says, is it?
Disjunction introduction.
Yes, it is. Awesome. How about 5? What do you guys think?
Conjunction elimination from line 4.
Beautiful. Conjunction elim, line 4. Thank you, Derege. And then line 4 itself.
Conditional elimination from line 1.
And remember, you can't just pull.
3.
There you go. We know we can't just pull off the consequent because we want it. We earn it with the affirmation of the antecedent. Beautiful work.
I have a question about the original statements.
Uh-huh.
How do we know which one are the premises and which one is the actual goal?
Okay. Keep going. Sorry, Deb, what are you thinking?
I was just wondering, is there like certain terminology we should be looking for to know that that's the goal?
Yeah, so if we go into, sorry, I'm having a meltdown, I don't know what's happening. Something is not good is happening. So there should be a list of indicator words and phrases. Typically, what you get is some standards like the following. So where's my, yeah, here we go. So some standard indicator words and phrases for premises, right? We have things like since, because, after all, for the reason that, and so forth. Forgive me because I'm blanking on the pagination in our textbook. I'll find it. But they're just some standards where you're thinking about indicator words and phrases that tell you about inferential flow. For the conclusion, indicator words for the for the conclusion, you have thus, therefore, so, it follows that, and on some others. But think about things this way. When you're reading an argument, pay attention to how the wording pushes you in a certain direction, right? It's either going to be the case that you're being pushed in the direction of evidence to inference, such that the sentences that are the evidence imply this sentence, whatever it is. Other times, the conclusion is asserted, and then you're given reasons to believe it, right? So you're going to notice that you've got the inference at the outset, and then the reasons to believe that inference are given after. And so the inferential flow is highlighted by indicator words and phrases. Sometimes that doesn't occur, but we can have that conversation. For our work, we'll see at least one indicator word or phrase to get us going. Does that help a little bit?
Yeah. Were the indicator words in the book in a certain chapter that we read?
Yeah, so that's what I'm just having I got nothing for you right now. I'm having a little brain meltdown. So let me find that for you. But it should be the case that, yeah, it should be the case that they're there. But I need to, I'll send you guys a message with the page number. In the meantime, though, if you have, so where are we? Today's the 23rd. Okay. So just as a reminder, when you are thinking about the exam, so ideally you're working on the e-exam now and you're practicing, right? When you're ready to start looking at the exam, which you can do, why is that linking to the e-exam? Huh. I'll have to fix that link. I thought that I linked the exam 3 to the page where I just was, but that took us to when I clicked on that link, it took us to the exam. I'll fix that. But you can start looking at the exam itself, now, and you'll notice that you're going to work some proof. You're going to conduct some proof completion work, and then you're going to construct and complete your own proof. And then in one case, you'll do work on a translation, and then you'll construct and complete the proof. So if you have any questions about that, let me know. In the meantime, just so that we don't end up rushing ourselves, I know we've run out of time today, but where we'll pick up next week is where we were meant to leave off, or what we were meant to start rather this week. We want to start working our last addition to the system. So we're going to work on quantifier logic.
So just to clarify, the e-exam is due this week and the exam is due next week?
Yes, thank you, Chloe. That's correct. As a reminder, although I don't encourage you to wait, know that you're not going to be locked out of an exam if you don't complete it by a due date. So the due date is there to keep us on track, but the deadline, the actual lock date, doesn't occur on the same date as the due date. I'm not going to do that to you because I don't know what your lives are like right now, et cetera, et cetera. So I know that you guys are working really hard. And if you need more time to either master a skill, or you haven't had time to look at something because you've been busy with other classes or work or other things in your life, just know you've got wiggle room. And if you have any questions, again, let me know so that I can address them, and in so doing, I hope alleviate any anxiety you might be feeling. What do we think?
Professor?
What do you think in Jeremy?
I wanted to visit during office hours. Just to talk about what you were just saying, like progression. But I have a math test, so I'll be sending you an email regarding if I can make it.
Okay.
But I mean, either way, because I know I talked about it earlier in the week with you.
Yeah.
At some point, like I want to do some exercises with you to like drill certain things.
Yeah.
But in terms of if I can actually do that today or not, like I'll let you know.
Okay. Yeah, I'm around. I'm
my
not.
other cat.
I'm sorry. I just talked right over you. Say the last part again, Jeremy.
What I'm saying is, depending on how long it takes me to do my test for my other class, is like if I finish it early enough, then I'll try to jump into office hours. But I mean, what I'm looking at is if I can make it, it'll probably be later towards your office hours, where it's
Sure.
because where I'm looking at it says 2:30 to 6:30. So
Yeah.
if I can make it, I'll probably jump in like later on in the day,
Sure.
like 8 or 6. But I can't promise that. So
Not to worry. So you guys should know. So two things. One is you should expect to see me in office hours. You don't have to attend. You don't even have to alert me. If you jump into office hours and my chair is empty, or it just means I've stepped out for a second. If I think I have to step out for like 5 minutes or something, I'll post a text to you, because sometimes I might have to, run downstairs and do something for my mom. But I'm around. In addition, don't feel like you're restricted to office hours. We can meet other days of the week, right? Lots of times I meet folks on the weekend, in the evening, right? So just know that there are options within the office hour time. There's you can jump in whenever you want. And if you can't make office hours or don't want to come to office hours, we can meet other times. Okay? I'm here. Don't be shy about letting me know that you want to talk. Sound good?
sounds good, Professor.
Okay.
Thank you.
Of course. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to get ready for another meeting, but I will either talk to you guys over the weekend or I'll see you on Tuesday. Sound good?
Sounds good.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Have a good one.
Good night.